Good afternoon. We shall be looking at the book of Daniel and Revelation. Daniel and Revelation are often put together because they are saying almost the same thing. In fact, one is an extended format of the other one. And it is a collection of events that took place in the land of Israel, especially in Judea, in the days of Daniel. And then when we are through with this, we move to Revelation as accounted by Apostle John. Now, this is a very interesting book. As we listen, the Lord is going to help us to simplify it in a way that it will be very clear to us. The event that happened in Daniel is something we need to learn a lesson from. There was a king by name Hezekiah. He was a very good king, and a time came that something happened to him. He was attacked by the Assyrians. He cried to God under Sennacherib. He cried to God, and God intervened and said that the Assyrians will not shoot an arrow in this place. And that was exactly what happened. He was delivered. And then in the next chapter, that is in Isaiah 37, 30, 39. So in the next chapter, he fell sick. And when he fell sick, Isaiah came to him and told him, prepare your house, you are going to die. You will not recover. But Hezekiah still went inside and did what he did in the last chapter. He prayed. And when he prayed, God spoke to Isaiah, go back and tell Hezekiah he's not going to die again. So we are dealing with a man who knows the power of prayer. He knows that when you pray, there's nothing you cannot change. Then, in the course of celebrating his victory over sickness, the enemies came to him, the Babylonians disguised as friends and came to him. And when they came, Hezekiah did not pray. He didn't find out from God whether he was to entertain them. Then he took them round the old palaces in Israel, showed them all the treasure houses, everything they had. And those ones were very, very smart. They asked him, we've heard so much about Israel and how your God used to fight for you. What is the secret? Then he took them to where the Ark of Covenant was kept and told them and said, well, this is our secret. We don't tell people, but since you guys are my friend, whenever we go to war, Israel doesn't fight war. We will carry this ark and put it before our enemies and sing, arise, O Lord, and your enemies will scatter. And then the host of heaven will take over the battle and fight on our behalf. That's why we always won. And whenever our God has been fighting and fighting, we will call him back to the ark, because when he go to war, he does not return. We will now say, return, O Lord, to the thousands of the house of Israel. And then the glory, the Shekinah will return to this ark and will bring the ark back to this place. Wow, the Babylonians were wow. They said, wow. Then what will you people do that will make this thing useless and powerless? Then he told them, anytime we sin against our God, this powerful boss will become empty, and then we will be powerless. And so these people took this information back to Babylon so that their next generation in Babylon will act on it. And that was exactly what happened. And then when Isaiah rushed to the palace and said, oh, king, who are the people who came? He said, they are the Babylonians. Hope they didn't see anything. He said, no, they have seen everything. Isaiah said, trouble has come. Because thus says the Lord, everything they have seen, they will carry them away, including the household of Judah, including your own children. Now, a man who prayed in the two previous chapters, when Sennacherib came and God delivered him, sent angels to fight on his behalf. A man who prayed when he was sick in the last chapter, and God changed even what he sent Isaiah to say. What does he supposed to do? He's supposed to pray again and say, oh God, I'm sorry for revealing the secret. Defend your people. But he didn't do that. He did what every foolish father would do. He said, this thing you are saying will happen. I hope it's not in my time. It's going to be in the days of my children. Then it's not a problem. After I would have died, I would have gone now. And so that was what happened. Now, years after, the invaders from Babylon came and carried the children of Israel, the children of Judea, to Babylon. And they were so surprised that nothing happened because as at that time they had already sent their girls to Israel, and the children of Israel were already messing up with them, so they had already sinned against their God. And then the enemy now came. They knew that by now the ark must be powerless, and so they carried them back to Babylon. In fact, it was at the entrance of Babylon they began to make jest of them. They said, but Israel, you people were powerful. Your God fought for you in Egypt. The Red Sea parted. I mean, so many great things happened. Why the wall of Jericho came down? Why is it now that we just pick you like snail and your God could not do anything? Is it because you have not sang? Because there's a song you people normally sing when you go to war. So the host of heaven, yeah, they sing the song now. Let's see what will happen. And so the children of Israel began to cry. And that was when they sang, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, and there we wept when we remember Zion. When the wicked carried us away, captivity requires from us a song. How can we sing the lost song in a strange land? Now, part of this batch of Judean children that were taken to captivity was a young man called Daniel. He was a prince alongside his three friends. I'll come back to him. Now, Babylon was a very powerful nation. It used to be the greatest empire in the world at the time under Hammurabi, and that was the first Babylon that was prominent and known. And then the geographical place of where you have Babylon now is where Mesopotamia used to be, which was the center of the earliest civilization. And also is a place where the Garden of Eden used to be. And so you see that we're dealing with a very unique place, a very solid place. In fact, Abraham was a native of that place. That is all of the Chaldeans. Another name for Babylonians is Chaldeans. And so bringing Israel back to Babylon is taking them back to where God called Abraham out of. That is returning back to where they had left generations ago. And so after the era of Hammurabi, it was sophisticated society, but they got destroyed. And then there was a man called Nabopolassar who now rebuilt the Babylon capital city. This Nabopolassar did this in 626 BC. He was the father of a young man called Nebuchadnezzar. And it was this Nebuchadnezzar who invaded Judea and took these people to Babylon. In Babylon, a king reigns with his first son, who is a regent, so that when the father dies, then the regent will come to the throne. And so in this context, Nebuchadnezzar was ruling along, and then later on, he died. Nebuchadnezzar took over as the king of Babylon. So the children of Israel were taken to Babylon. Now, when we say children of Israel, we are not referring to all the children of Israel. No, the northern kingdom had already been taken to captivity by Assyrians, years before that of Judah. So we are dealing with only Judah, the people of Judah, which is the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. So they are the one that the book of Daniel centered on. Now, let me come back to Daniel. Daniel was, with his friends, were properly brought up. They were growing up in the palace at a time when the king was godly. His name was Josiah. And so he introduced the worship of God in the palace. So all the young men grew up loving God. Then the prophet that was in Israel at that time was called Jeremiah. He was very bold. And so when you look at Daniel, you see two inheritance. One, godliness inherited from Josiah, then bravery and boldness from prophet Jeremiah. So upbringing is very vital in the life of a man. And so the Daniel we see in the book of Daniel did not just emerge from the moon. There were people that contributed to him. And so with his friends, of course, not everybody you teach will retain the teaching, but there must be somebody who will retain it. So when they got to Babylon, the king of Babylon Nebuchadnezzar thought he was doing them favor by picking them to be trained so that from among them they will select those who will serve the king. And so they put them together in the school with their own young people. And the Bible says that Daniel was 10 times better than the rest. This is one of the areas of showing that our God is the greatest. In fact, that is one thing the Jews, one of the belief system of the Jews is that a Jewish father would tell the child that anywhere you go in this world, you must be the best. That is the only way to show the people that Yahweh is the greatest. Number two, a Jewish father will tell the child, look around, there are 22 nations that surround Israel, and all of them are our enemies. They want you dead. They want to destroy you. But they could not destroy Abraham. They could not destroy Isaac. They could not destroy Israel. They could not destroy my ancestors. They couldn't destroy me. Israel must not be destroyed in your generation. And so the child from around age 4, 5, generational responsibility is already handed over to him. And they will tell them also, my child, anywhere you go in this world, you are not part of the people of that land. You are a Jew. And that is why if you see the Jews in America, they say we are American Jews. If you see them in Europe, we are European Jews. Anywhere you see them, they will still attach Jews because they know that wherever they find themselves, they are Jews. So the same thing is what Daniel and his friends did here. They know that they were not Babylonians. And so the culture of identity, knowing who we are, is a lesson every people group need to learn from the Jews. And so that's why you see the Jews inventing and doing so many great things, because that's the way they are brought up. And so there's no nation in this world that has faced persecution and adversity like the Jews. Yet, that same tiny nation has produced over 177 Nobel laureates. And then is the world leader in science and technology and military hardware. They are always in the forefront, even in agriculture. And talk about medicine. Israel is leading on in virtually everything. Talk about banking, talk about business. Why? Because the Jewish heritage is handed over from one generation to the other, and the culture of excellence is key. And so when you see Daniel and his 3 friends excelling above every other person in Babylon, it is part of the rabbinical training, part of the synagogue training, that our God said we must be the head and not the tail. And one thing the church need to learn from the Jews is, the Jews don't just quote Bible and sit there. Now, when they say, yes, our God said we are going to be the head and not the tail, so they are working themselves out to be that head. They know that when you quote scriptures, you have to walk scriptures out. It's a lesson we need to learn from them. Anyway, let's leave that. So, now, in the palace, the king ordered them to be served food. It was a normal food in Babylon, but it was contrary. It was not a normal food in Israel. Somebody can rationalize it and say, well, we are no longer in Israel. We are in Babylon. We have to eat what Babylonians eat. But these 4 Hebrew children said, no, our God is everywhere. There is no safe place to sin against him. We will not do that. And then another person may also say that if God actually loves us, why did he allow them to carry us to this place? And they become disgruntled. But these 4 guys didn't do that. And they were eating simple vegetable water. And at the end of the day, they were better than the rest of the people. That was the first trial. So the victory of the Jews began with their purposeful ability to say no when it mattered most. Now, today we see so many people who say, oh, we can be in government like Daniel and all that. But how many of us we get to the government and not eat what the Babylonians are eating? How many of us will get there and see money and remember that we are Jews? So that is the key lesson we need to learn. So in Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 21, it's all about a group of young men who stood their ground, ready for whatever consequences, because what was given to them was against the law of their God. And you see that even the servant who was giving them the food, they found favor before him. You know, they found favor. So most of the time, why we compromise is we feel that, oh, if people here, they will not agree, they will not. Well, we have not even tried. You know, they found favor, and at the end of the day, they look better than those who were eating the king's meat. Let me add here. These 4 guys were not the only Jewish children. There were other ones that got lost. We don't know them. The Bible does not record their names. They weren't the only people that were taken. But because they are the one who stood their ground, that's why we are talking about them now. Those who compromise over little pots of porridge, we don't know anything about them. I asked somebody recently, where are the Edomites on the map? He doesn't know where they are. Where are the Israelites? We know. And that is what the pot of porridge can do. So it's a very great lesson that everyone needs to learn. Now, another thing they did to them was that they changed their names. Look at it. The name of Daniel is God is Judge. God is Judge. Then they say it's because God is in his name. Let's change it. They change it to Belshazzar, which is Bel's prince. Bel is a god in Babylon. They change Ananias, which is Jehovah is gracious. They change it to Shadrach, which is inspiration of Rak, another idol in Babylon. Mishael, which is who is what God is. They change it to Meshach, which is who is what Shak is, another idol in Babylon. Azariah, which is the Lord helps. They change it to Abednego, which is servant of Nebo, another idol in Babylon. So, in fact, you could see that even the names we know them with are the one the Babylonians gave them. But despite the fact that they bear idols' names, they still belong to Yahweh. So it is not the name people bear. If you change people's name, once you have not changed their conviction, you've not changed them at all. It's a lesson we need to learn. In Africa, we have people who change their name from the idol background and they adopt one Jewish name and they think they are now Christians and all that. But their behavior and character is worse than the idol worshippers. So it is only the names that change. The character has not changed. But these people, they were bearing idols' names, but they belong to Yahweh. It's a very great lesson. So that is the initial test of faith, and these Hebrew children overcome. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2, the king had a dream, a very unique vision. Now, in this vision, he saw an image which depicts the plan of the ages. He saw image of gold. The head is of gold, the breast and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet of iron mixed with clay. And then he saw one stone that was thrown without hand, eat the legs, and then crumble the entire system. Now, what was God saying? God was telling Nebuchadnezzar that the world is not accidental. I have planned it. After your kingdom, another kingdom will come, another kingdom will come, another kingdom. Now, if you look at this thing, you will realize that it is the inferior metal that destroyed the superior one, which is not normal. But God was telling him that the way I've planned this world, that's the way it will go. After you, you are not going to last forever. Someone is going to take over after you. And then it will continue like that until I destroy the whole human system. So that was the vision Nebuchadnezzar saw. And the summary of that dream or that vision was that the head of gold represents the Babylonian Empire, that an end will come to them. Then there will be kingdom of Media and Persia, which we call Medo-Persia. And then they will also do their own, but an end will come to them. Then there will also be belly and thighs of bronze, which is Graeco-Macedonia, the Greece. But they will do, but an end will come to them. Then there will be legs of iron, which represent the Roman Empire. They will break in pieces, do everything, but an end will come to them. And after them, there will not be a mixture of government. We are iron and clay. Strong nations, weak nations will mix together, form an organization. But that one also will not last forever. An end will come. But after that one, which the scholars call the United Nations Organization, the arrangement we have now in the world. So after that one, there's no any other empire. What remains is eternal rock of ages, who will crumble the system and dominate the earth. And so God gave apocalyptic vision to Nebuchadnezzar. Now, when you look at this, when he had this dream, he forgot. And then he woke up, he gathered all his astrologers and philosophers and all of that and said, okay, now come and interpret, dream interpreters, interpret this dream for me. They say, okay, Your Majesty, there's no problem. What is the dream? He said, I can't even remember the dream self. In fact, you are to tell me the dream and you are to interpret. So all these people who have been doing so well before, but this type of issue had never come up. All along, people used to tell them the dream. The kings would tell them the dream, then they will interpret. Just the same thing that happened to between Pharaoh and Joseph. Pharaoh told Joseph the dream, and then Joseph interpreted. But in this context, the king said, I don't know the dream, and I don't know the interpretation. Now, all these magicians, astrologers, there was no idol in Babylon that has ever done this one. So they were all powerless. And the king said, I'm going to destroy all of you. I'm going to kill all of you if you don't give me an answer. So the information got to Daniel and his friends. And Daniel went to Arioch and said, what am I hearing? That the king said, okay, no, there's no problem. If the gods of Babylon cannot do it, our God can do all things. Just give me time. Let me talk with him. And I will tell the king the dream and the interpretation. God always creates an event in a mission field to prove himself. Initially, it will look like persecution. It will look like a problem. But God himself allowed that so as to prove himself to the people. And so they allowed them. And then Daniel was able to come up and interpreted the dream to the king. And then the God of Daniel was acknowledged. Remember, in chapter 1, they changed his name from that God. But when they saw the act of that God in chapter 2, his God was acknowledged. So that is that about this chapter of the book of Daniel. And from there, we'll move to chapter 4, which is the next event that happened. And before we go to that event, let's look at chapter 3, which is idolatry and loyalty. The king now, in fact, Daniel told him and said, your kingdom will be destroyed, so humble yourself. And you obey that, humble yourself for a year. But after a year, pride came to him, and we're going to discuss that elaborately. But he made an image and asked everybody to come and worship this image. That is chapter 3. And that everybody should bow to it. At that time, Daniel was not around. He was an ambassador to Persia. That is another information we will mention later on. So, but his 3 friends were around. And the lesson here is this. As a pastor, make sure that your members know God, because of the day you will not be there. Now, Daniel was always the spokesperson. He was always the one leading. But this time around, he was not around. And everybody was asked to come and bow to the image of the king. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they also knew God. They were not just following Daniel. So they stood their ground. And they told him, oh, king, we are not careful to hear you in this matter. The God whom we serve is able to deliver us. And if he choose not to, he remain our God. And they were thrown into the furnace of fire. the Lord appeared there. A very great lesson. He didn't appear before they got there. He waited for them inside. That means they were already ready to die. So the Lord intervened and they were delivered. It was the people who were throwing there, the flame of fire slew them. And so again, God also, the king acknowledged the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That means the same way the leader of a group knows God is the same way those who are following him should know him. Christianity is not where the one big man of God is in charge of every, and the rest are just say yes, 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 yes. And then when the big man of God is no longer there, it's to your thanks, O Israel. That is not the way it is. Everybody in a group serving God should know God because of a day of adversity. And so these Jewish children demonstrated to the people in Babylon that there is a God of the Jews, irrespective of the fact that they were in captivity. Their God is still alive. Oh, what a very wonderful lesson. That even in the midst of our challenges, we should be able to see our God is still alive. He has done all things well. So that's a very great lesson. And so we will just stop with these three today. Chapter 1, their faith was tested by the fruit that was given to them and their names that were changed. But they remain resolute. Chapter 2, idols could not say the dream and interpret it, but the God of Daniel did. And in chapter 3, they were to worship an idol. If it is in other place, they will not want to offend Nebuchadnezzar. They will say, the man has been so good to us. The man has been so kind to us. Is it not to bow once? He just only won. A little compromise, but they refused. And God honored them and honored their faith. And the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego